Hey there, it is Saturday, so it's movie night, and I'm here to present another quarantine quadruple feature for your viewing pleasure. Now, we just finished our 15th week of quarantine, if you can believe it. So I have spent 15 weeks in my apartment. Unfortunately, a lot of people have not been doing that. And several states have tried to reopen. Florida, Texas, Arizona, which concerns me because a majority of my friends and family back home in Arizona are now in one of the hotbeds of COVID activity because they reopened. Nobody's wearing masks. People are flooding bars and restaurants, and coronavirus cases are, of course, now spiking in those areas. All of the countries that were doing so much worse than us when this first started, and now it seems like all of them are doing so much better and are on the backside of COVID. We are not. We're just going up and up and up, and we are just doing worse and worse because this country can't agree on anything, not even safety, science, health, not passing viruses on to other people. Everything has become a political topic, which is ridiculous because none of this stuff should be political debates. This is all just safety. It's not infringing on our rights. It's not slowly eking away our freedom. It's whatever. I don't want to talk about that. But I'm really excited about today's films. Now, if you've been quarantining like me, if you've been a responsible American, then you've been staying inside of your house or apartment. And if you have a house and you have like a backyard, a balcony, more than a couple bedrooms, you don't know how lucky you are because I've been spending all of my time in my 2-bedroom apartment. I have no outdoor space. I had to kind of rig a couple seats over by a big window, open the window really wide, take the screen out, and pretend I have a balcony. I've been confined to this apartment, and that really got me thinking about movies that are set in apartments. Now, apartment movies are something I'm very fascinated by. My friend Jay is as well. We've talked at length about apartment films and how we both really love them. So today we're going to be focusing on apartment movies. Now, I'm actually going to be opening the idea up a little bit. So the movie doesn't have to be set entirely inside one apartment, but it has to be set in an apartment or their building. Now, in the films, 1 or 2 times, they may kind of venture outside of the building, but not for very long. Most of the action in the film takes place in the confines of one apartment building. So I've got 4 movies planned. Let's get to it. The first one we're going to watch, one of the best horror films of the past 20 years. We're going to be watching Wreck. Usually when I talk to people, they say, Wreck, what does that mean? Wreck is the little REC that you see when you're recording an older kind of camcorder type camera. This is a found footage movie. And I know found footage turns a lot of people off, but this is how you make a found footage movie. This movie is intense. It's scary. It's just under 80 minutes, so it's a breeze. This movie flies. It starts off in a fire station, and there's a woman doing, she's a reporter for a news program that does like up late all night with a certain interesting job, and she's with a fire department. And while they're doing their episode, the fire department gets called to this apartment building for an emergency that's going on. They go inside this apartment building, and that's when kind of chaos breaks out. It is kind of an infection zombie type movie, but it's really, really well done. This is not in English, so you're going to have to read a little bit. It's in Spanish. The movie is set in Spain, Barcelona, I believe, and there's 2 filmmakers who made this, and I believe their names are Jaime Balaguero and Paco Plaza, and they made the film together, and then they made the sequel as well, Wreck 2, which is also phenomenal. Both of those movies are really great. After Wreck and Wreck 2, they split up and kind of started directing their own movies, and for the most part, they kind of both stay in horror. And interesting enough, Wreck 2 would also be a great apartment movie if you want another recommendation. That's not part of our quadruple feature tonight, but Wreck 2 is fantastic as well. But after Wreck 2, one of them directed Wreck 3, and then after that, the other one directed Wreck 4. But after Wreck 2, they abandoned the found footage format and kind of go just a more standard cinematic type storytelling. And I actually don't think it works as well for these particular stories. They also open them up wider in the world. So Wreck 3 takes place at like a big wedding venue during a wedding, and part 4 takes place on this big ship in the ocean, and I think the confines of the apartment building kind of work better for the movie. It was, of course, remade as an American film called Quarantine. Maybe a little too real for right now. Stars Jennifer Carpenter. This is directed by the guy who did the Poughkeepsie tapes. That was a movie, kind of got him some notoriety, so he kind of is used to doing some found footage type movies. But Quarantine, it's fine. It's like pretty standard remake. It's pretty close to the original, but definitely go with Rec. That's the one that that would be my Rec for you to watch. Rec was the first movie that starred a guy named Javier Botet. And Javier Botet, you might not recognize him if you see him, but he is in every horror movie. So basically, this is an actor who is so tall and skinny. He's like 6'6" and super thin. So he has this really crazy body. He's kind of the perfect body type to be a monster in monster movies. And that's exactly what he is. He's in a scene in Rec, and I'm not going to tell you too much about it, but I will tell you that the whole movie is really scary, and the last 10 minutes are very, very intense. But after Rec, he's in the It movies playing creatures. He is the Crooked Man in The Conjuring 2. He plays Slender Man in the newest Slender Man movie. He was Mama in Andy Muschietti's Mama. He was one of the aliens in Alien Covenant. So he's in everything now. But there's another movie that is very similar to Rec. It's called Mulberry Street. And Mulberry Street is made by a filmmaker named Jim Mickle, and I think this was his directorial debut. At least it's the first thing I ever saw him do. But I thought this one was just exceptionally well done, low budget horror film, and I've been following his career pretty closely ever since. And he did Stakeland, Cold in July, and now he does the television show Hap and Leonard. And I think he's just one of the best kind of genre filmmakers that's working right now. I'm surprised his career isn't more on the radar of horror fans across the world, because he does really exceptional work. Mulberry Street, if you're looking for more apartment set horror films. Of course, there's also Critters 3. That one is set entirely in an apartment. It's funny though, they kind of advertised it like the critters are taking over a big city. You know, it started off in kind of a small country town, and now it's in a big city. That's kind of a common gimmick you see in horror films, is that, oh, now we're going to send this character to a big area and we're really going to have a big movie. They did the same kind of gimmick for the 8th Friday the 13th film, Jason Takes Manhattan, where the ads kind of led you to believe Jason was going to be at all of the kind of tourist destinations that you see in New York. And they thought it was going to be a really like big, expansive picture that finally takes Jason out of Crystal Lake, where he had been in all of his films for the previous 7 films. But then as the movie went on for the pre-production, the budget kept shrinking and shrinking, so they couldn't actually afford to go to all of these crazy places in New York, like the Empire State Building and, like, you know, famous bridges in Times Square. They had to start whittling down all of these spectacular sequences that they had planned. And then eventually it got down to, they had one night to film in Times Square, and it wasn't even a full night. It was like they had a few hours, so they got to block off some traffic and some pedestrians and have Jason essentially walk through Times Square. And then they got like one money shot of the camera kind of panning around him as you see all of the lights of Times Square surrounding him, and that's the ad that they used to plug the whole movie, to make everyone think that he was going to be in New York for the whole movie. In reality, most of Jason Takes Manhattan is on a luxury liner or a cruise ship. In reality, it's just a very small ship. And then when they get to New York, most of that is filmed in Vancouver, in back alleys and sets. So very little New York. So horror films are sometimes notorious, especially with the longer a franchise goes, the more extreme they get with telling you, making big promises about where your creatures or your characters are going. And Critters 3 did the same thing. They're going to take over Los Angeles. In reality, they took over an apartment building. And then the critters for Critters 4 go to space. And what's funny about Critters 3 and Critters 4 is they essentially had, more or less, you could think of it like one budget, and they essentially split that budget in 2, and they said, we're going to make 2 movies with that. So they make this big apartment set that they filmed it all in, and then after they finished filming Critters 3, they immediately turned around and revamped all of their apartment sets into spaceship sets, and just rolled right over into filming Critters 4, which is kind of an interesting way to make a couple horror films, get more bang for your buck, I guess. Oh, and Critters 3 stars a young man, Leonardo DiCaprio. His acting debut for feature films was Critters 3. Another really great apartment set horror film is Demons 2. It's a sequel to Italian horror film Demons. Enough about the horror stuff. We're going to be starting off strong with Wreck. Movie number 2, Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece, Rear Window. Rear Window is just a terrific example of filmmaking. This is about as cinematic as a movie can get. And that's because you're watching Hitchcock kind of piece everything together visually. It's not a movie that's really hinging on the screenplay or the words that the characters are saying. It's a movie that hinges completely on what you're seeing. And this movie fascinates me because in addition to being just an exceptionally well-made film, the movie's all about voyeurism. And I mean, that's what all movies are essentially about anyway. We are the voyeurs when we watch a movie. We kind of forget that, but when we're watching a screen, we are seeing the most intimate portrayals of people's lives. We're seeing their deepest, darkest secrets. We're seeing a glimpse, even though it's mostly created in fantasy, we're seeing glimpses of people's lives that we would never be privy to in our actual lives. So watching movies is a very intimate experience. There's something called scopophilia. Freud coined it, and it's basically like deriving sexual pleasure from looking at something. But I think scopophilia kind of goes beyond sexual gratification, like looking at naked bodies or whatever, and we're kind of always in the act of scopophilia when we're watching a movie. But that's really apparent when you're watching Rear Window, because you are watching someone be a voyeur the entire time. So it's very fascinating because I feel like it draws attention to yourself as an audience member, because you're thinking, what would I be doing if I was spying on someone like this guy's spying on people? But you're spying on him doing that. So Hitchcock is, of course, one of cinema's greatest, but he's also one of cinema's greatest perverts. He was all about voyeurism and spying on people. He was a total creep, which is why he was so effective at movies like that. Of course, there's the very famous scene in Psycho where Norman Bates moves the picture frame and he peeks in Marion Crane taking a shower. But I feel like Rear Window is really his most voyeuristic film. So it stars Jimmy Stewart, and he has a broken leg, and he is stuck in his apartment, and he has a telescope, and he starts peeping out his neighbors in the building across the courtyard, and we get to know the neighbors from a distance. These small characters kind of across the way. We start to get to know them through what he thinks of them and what he nicknames them, and the narratives that he's kind of putting on their lives. And then, of course, he witnesses what he assumes is a murder take place in another apartment, and then he wants to solve that murder. So it's a pretty simple story, but really it's just an incredible example of filmmaking and the power of filmmaking. I mean, if you want to study a film for its cinematic effect, Rear Window is really one of the best movies to watch when you're trying to learn more about filmmaking, because it's all just Hitchcock speaking cinematic language. Everyone knows who Alfred Hitchcock is. He made 53 feature films in his lifetime. He was a British filmmaker, came over here to America and started making some movies in America as well. And he really, in America, popularized the art of montage. So you see montage used in every movie. Montage is basically just editing a scene together with little to no dialogue. So an action sequence would be montage, these suspense sequences that he does so brilliantly are just a tremendous example of how well he uses the art of montage. Right? We all know him as the master of suspense. That's kind of his handle that he was very famous for. And that's because he used the art of montage so well. So the classic example Hitchcock gives about filmmaking is you can draw out the suspense or you can have surprise. And sometimes surprise works well in a movie, but a surprise it's a one and done, it's over once it happens. And his famous example was a bomb underneath a kitchen table as a family's having dinner. If you don't see the bomb, you just have a scene with the family having dinner, and then at one point the bomb explodes and the family's dead. And that's a very shocking, jarring moment, but then that's all you get is the moment. However, Hitchcock prefers to show you the bomb because then it makes the entire dinner table sequence way more suspenseful. So he was really terrific at storyboarding his movies. He was famous for knowing exactly how the movie was going to be directed. So a movie like Rear Window is perfect for Hitchcock because he's such a visual filmmaker, because he knows every beat that's going to happen before they ever start rolling the camera. He could really plot something like that out. Such a visual voyeuristic movie is right in his wheelhouse. He makes movies set in one location frequently. He has another apartment movie that we could be watching tonight. We're going to watch Rear Window, but we could be watching Rope, which is set entirely in one apartment, and it's Jimmy Stewart again, and it's based on the Leopold and Loeb case, very famous case of murder. You know what? We've programmed Rope on another day, so I'm going to dive into all of that a little bit later. I'm getting off track. And he has a movie called Lifeboat, which is a really brilliant film of a ship sinks, and the whole movie takes place on the lifeboat with a group of survivors. And even though he had these areas that you would think have to be a real world location, like an apartment building or a lifeboat or whatever, he filmed almost everything inside sound stages. Hitchcock hated going into the real world because there was so much he couldn't control in the real world. In a soundstage, he blocks out all the sound of the real world, he controls all of the light, all of the weather, and he can have perfect control because he was obsessed with having complete control of all of his films. So Rear Window is actually filmed entirely inside of a soundstage. It was just a massive soundstage, and he built the apartment across the street like up almost as high as the soundstage could go. So when you're watching that, it looks like a building, but you're actually inside of a bigger building watching the whole movie. So it's very fascinating how they accomplished even making the movie the way that he wanted to make it. But our second movie is going to be Hitchcock's masterpiece, Rear Window. Our third movie that we're going to be watching, we're going to ramp up the action big time. We're going to watch Gareth Evans' The Raid. So Gareth Evans is a Welsh filmmaker, so he's a white guy who moved to Indonesia to make movies. So The Raid is an Indonesian film made by a Welsh filmmaker. So it's kind of interesting how that movie even came into existence. The Raid came about because Gareth Evans, for a couple years, was trying to raise funds for another movie, a much bigger action film, which eventually became The Raid 2. They couldn't get the funds for this movie. Then they decided to go to a smaller, more stripped down action film set entirely in one location, which is the apartment building that it's set in. The action in this movie is explosive, nonstop, so well choreographed. If you like fight scenes and you haven't seen The Raid, you have to see The Raid. And if you don't like action movies, you should still probably see The Raid, because then you will probably like an action movie. It's about a group of police that are raiding an apartment complex that's like a drug house, right? And every floor they're gonna have to like fight their way through all of the crooks and criminals that are there. So it's very much like a video game, trying to get all the way to the big boss at the end, which has a spectacular fight as well. But this one is one of the better action films that you're bound to see. The Raid also has a really great score as well that keeps the action moving throughout and really complements all of the stuff that you're seeing on screen. The same year The Raid came out, there was another film that came out called Dread. I also recommend checking this one out as well. I'm not watching this one tonight just because I prefer The Raid, and this one is like more of a futuristic type apartment building. It's all in one apartment building, very similar. Judge Dredd is going and fighting his way through all of these bad guys in this apartment building that he gets locked inside of. But if you like The Raid, then definitely check out Dredd as well. And if you have a 3D player, definitely check it out in 3D. The 3D looks really cool on Dredd. Fourth movie we are going to be watching, Roman Polanski's Repulsion from 1965. This is his first English language film. Catherine Deneuve is a woman who is living in an apartment with her sister. Her sister goes on a trip and she is slowly going insane inside of her apartment by herself, much like many of us are doing, I'm sure. But it's a woman who has I don't know how to describe it, a fear of interacting with men, which I feel like is a pretty healthy fear. It does a really great job of making it unclear as the movie goes on if what we're seeing is reality or her perception of reality as her grip on reality loosens throughout the film. Yeah, we're definitely going to separate the artist from the art in this instance, and we're going to watch Repulsion. He would go on to make 2 more apartment movies as well, and it's called his Apartment Trilogy. Of course, Rosemary's Baby. We're going to talk at length about Rosemary's Baby on another date. Check your syllabus, as well as The Tenant. This one actually stars Roman Polanski, so it's even weirder to watch this. But those are the 4 movies that we're going to be watching. Wreck, Rear Window, The Raid, Repulsion. All of the movies start with the letter R. Rear Window's from 1954, I believe. So we're spanning a few decades with our apartment films. You probably saw my birthday banner. I just had my birthday. I didn't decorate for my birthday. This is actually for a short film that I'm going to be working on that takes place on a birthday. But I just had my birthday on June 25th, and on my birthday I dropped a short film, which I didn't really plan any of this to coincide. I had been planning to do my apartment series for my quarantine quadruple feature, but I hadn't planned on releasing my film so close to that. But I realized that the movie that I just released on my birthday, the short film, is an apartment movie. So here's that. I'll just stick it right at the end of this if you want to watch that. But enjoy the 4 films. If you're going to watch them, enjoy any of the films that I recommended. Hope you're taking care of yourself, staying healthy. Enjoy the movies. Where's your head and other arm? Oh, please, dig in. Enjoy. Are you kidding me? Thank you for joining me. It's just so refreshing to finally have some good company, some good conversation, some good food. Well, hopefully good food. I guess we'll see. Oh, you do like it? Oh, okay, good. Yes, I did make it. Come on. Amateur chef, if anything. I call it Green Goddess. It's completely vegan. No, I'm not a stickler about it, but I do try to be aware of what I put into my body. You know, our bodies truly are the greatest gift we have, so why not try to take care of it? But that being said, you can't pull me away from a good steak. Yes. Exactly. That's good. That's good. You are funny. You didn't tell me you were this funny. Oh, let me guess. Other guys find it intimidating. Typical. Well, I think you will soon find I'm not like other guys. So let's cut to the chase. Does your husband know that you're here? Okay. Wow. You are a very naughty girl. As luck would have it, I happen to like very naughty girls. And I tell you what, I think I'm good on the green goddess. Now I'm hungry for something else. A different type of goddess. A little warm in here, huh?
I believe in the feeling. It's like something I can't explain, 'cause it's just different. I'll be damned if I can't see what your loving does for me. And it seems that I can't find the words to say. It ain't no sin.
My God.
And we can begin.
What a body.
Get to know each other. We don't have to rush. We can take it slow. Your eyes, take you to a higher place.
Sorry, baby. You're still beautiful. Don't worry. You have such green eyes. Hello? Who's there? Hey, get out of here. I'm not gonna open the door. I'm gonna call the cops. Baby, I think you dropped your sheet.